This is Faye Ann Smaw, and over the past couple of years I've become aware that there are different accounts of my mother's passing. And at the time I didn't respond because what was being said was so far removed from what we actually experienced, it just didn't feel necessary to address. I believed that the way my mother, the Reverend Faye Ann Smaw, left this world spoke for itself. She lived her life on her own terms, guided by her faith, and I believed her passing, peaceful, intentional, and witnessed by those closest to her, would be remembered in that same way. But as time has passed, I have come to understand that clarity matters. So I want to share what I personally witnessed and to honor her truthfully. In the final months of her life, Mama made her wishes very clear. She told us she was tired. She said she was ready, and she expressed that she wanted to go home to be with Daddy and with Jesus, who she had served her entire life. A few months earlier, Mama had gone through a similar period where she had stopped eating and taking her medication. And at that time, Beth alerted me to what was happening, and I flew to Florida. And I cooked one of her favorite soups, and with some encouragement, which didn't take a lot because she loves my soup, but she began eating again, and she regained her strength for a while. But in her final days, when she made that same decision again, it was clear this time was different. She was at peace with her decision. When Beth Ann alerted the family that she felt that Mama was close to the end, I flew out again. And when I arrived from California, Beth and I sat on either side of her bed, and she didn't open her eyes at first. But when Beth told her I was there, she opened her eyes with a shocked expression and then softened into a smile, something I've seen her do so many times. And then she closed her eyes again. And I spoke to her the way that I always had, in that teasing tone and matter-of-fact way of kind of a banter that she and I had developed over the years. And I asked her about her not eating. I'm like, what's this about you not taking any medication and you're not eating? And she didn't open her eyes, but she sort of lifted her eyebrows as if to say, and? It's just so like her. So I tried to give her something to drink. I thought, she might take it from me because I've always been the one who cooked for her, and she loved when I would make her favorite foods. And I really believed that she would take something like just for me. But her eyes popped open and she jerked away from me, and she shook her head and she said very clearly, no. So I kind of chastised her lightly, and I kind of spoke plainly to her again in the way that's so common in our family. And I said, no, if you continue not eating and not drinking anything, you are going to die. You know that, right? With her eyes closed, she just lifted her eyebrows once again, and with that familiar expression gave a faint nod of her head. It was just clear to me that she understood and that she had already made her choice. So during that time, hospice care was brought in, and they again raised the question of whether her pacemaker should be disabled because of her wishes and her long-standing do not resuscitate order. Beth declined that request multiple times. The pacemaker was never disabled. In fact, hospice was ultimately dismissed by Beth because of their continued pressure around that issue. But before those final days, our family had gathered with her, like Mark and David and Beth and her family and my children and other people. And Mark, who, was our choir director when we were growing up in our family church, played the piano at the nursing home, and we sang old church hymns and choir songs together, and other residents came and listened, and the room was filled with gospel music. And Mama was so proud, surrounded by her family and being honored in the way she loved. Years earlier, she had said that when her time came, she believed that the choirs would be singing her on home, and that stayed with us. So on my last day there, before leaving for the airport, Beth and I stood beside her again. We did what we had done before. We sang Amazing Grace and In the Sweet By and By and other hymns and old church songs. And when we finished singing, she passed. Peacefully, gently, and in faith. Exactly the way she had expressed she wanted. And in her final moments, she wasn't surrounded by a room full of people. She was between me and Beth, and one on each side of her bed. But in the months leading up to that moment, she had been surrounded by her family and visited and honored and loved by many of us who came to be with her, to sing with her, and to share in those final days. Mama, my mother, the Reverend Faye Ann Smaw, was a woman of conviction and faith and strong will, and she lived her life on her own terms, guided by her relationship with God. And she left this world in that same spirit. And I share this so that she is remembered truthfully and in the fullness of who she was, because she was the Reverend Faye Ann Smaw, my mother.
And